Under the broad topic of dance, I'd like to concentrate on one particular country, and that's France. The French dance suite was enormously important in the Baroque period, which, as a harpsichordist, is my starting point. And spilling from there, it evolved into that other quintessentially French art form, the ballet, which is still described in French terms and is still alive and well and continuing to develop. Coming from the perspective of the harpsichord, and thus the 17th and early 18th centuries, the French dance suite was hugely influential throughout courtly Europe. The French used dance music as far back as the Renaissance as entertainment, both in the villages and in the courts, and later it became institutionalised into a form of social control or guidance during the period of Louis XIV. During Louis's reign, French composition was largely in dance form, even opera and chanson, but certainly instrumental music. It eventually evolved into the series of stylised dances connected by an overarching story, which is the ballet as we know it today. In this talk, I'll describe important principles in terms of performance, firstly, of the harpsichord as continuo accompaniment, this being its principal role in the court, using examples from Suite in D for transverse flute by Jacques Hotteterre, before touching on two entrancing works based on dance by Claude Debussy, the Suite Children's Corner, and more comprehensively, his children's ballet La Boîte à Joujou. Debussy is of special interest in 2018 because, apart from this being the century of his death, he is a composer who espoused the Frenchness of French music, who valued the musical legacy he had received from his nation, and whose qualities seem particularly suited to these wonderful square pianos. Hotteterre's Suite in D, Opus 2 number 1, comprises 7 movements, each with its own title. The solo line is intended for transverse flute, but other treble instruments could be used. The continuo is unspecified, but would be suitable for harpsichord and viola da gamba, which happens to be the instruments I use. The continuo is unspecified, but the order of the suite is Prélude, L'Entongue, Allemande la Royale, gracieusement, Rondo le Duc d'Orléans, gay, Sarabande la Damagnac, Gavotte la Meudon, Menuet 1 and 2, Le Comte de Biron, Gic la Folichon. But before laying hands on the keyboard, it's worth remembering a number of things from an historical perspective. Firstly, nothing was done in Hotteterre's time without reference to the monarch Louis XIV, who reigned from 1653 to 1715. For a large part of the 17th and early 18th centuries, the influence of Louis XIV on French thinking would be difficult to overestimate and extended well beyond his realm. As the most powerful monarch in Europe, he engineered a system of government that revolved around his court, using the court as a means of executing strict authority involving self-discipline and the observance of unwritten rules and behaviours. This could be observed at all levels, from matters as basic as dress, conversation, manners, and comportment, to the arts and even morals. Hierarchy was expressed in terms of rank, which in turn demanded certain responses, such as position within the procession, the type of reference, and the order within the dance. Rank, position in the royal cercle, and the reference all came to be expressed in the preeminent art form of the era, the courtly dance, and by extension, the instrumental dance suite. The courtly ball under Louis XIV, at which dance was so important a part, was a ceremonial occasion of extreme formality that epitomised the order of the court. The ball opened with a dance of parade, led by the king. Rank was displayed by the dances which began and ended with the reference. How can the continuo convey these noble and by this time characteristically French qualities? The continuo's stock in trade is the chord, how it is struck does much to determine the character of a piece. By and large, it seems that the nature of the chord in French music should be vertical. A number of things suggest this. For a start, Bordelot says that French taste in music did not include smothering the melody with the thick layers of sound favoured by the Italians. Secondly, a vertical upright posture was the desired form of noble carriage, both at an ordinary level and within the dance. Thirdly, the precision of rhythmic drive and regularity needed by the dancer in order to successfully keep in time to the dance specified clean vertical chords. And finally, several sources indicate that chords were indeed played quickly. Saint-Lambert says, arpeggiations are suitable only in the recitative, where there is no strict metre. But in vivacious airs, one must strike the chords simultaneously with their bass. And, from Rameau, the finger which strikes first must always depart with the bass, and the fingers must follow it, so that it seems that everything is together, although this should form a kind of arpeggiation, as when one plays 3 or 4 demi-semiquavers one after another quickly. Hotteterre's awareness of royal authority and noble decorum is immediately apparent in the lineup of pieces in his suite. The type of dance and its position within the dance suite both suggest the influence of courtly hierarchy. An allemande, a linear dance, originally described by Arbeau as a simple, rather sedate dance, often opened the grand ball as it served this function as a dance of parade. The noble man and noble woman proceeding in a line up and down the hall. Rank would have been observed within the dance as the lines of couples moved in procession, the king and his partner first, others of lesser rank following. Representing the king, this piece comes as the first structured dance in the suite. Its character is thus grand and formal, yet gracious, gracieusement. Allemande La Royale is preceded by a prelude, which could also serve the function of opening music for the ball and which shares some features in common with Allemande. Like Allemande, its slow duple metre and regular rhythm allow free movement of the solo part so that the highly ornamented and therefore ill-defined flute line contrasts with the regular, steady bass line, suggesting the presence of the king amongst his guests. The exception to the vertical chords of the prelude is the opening one. In acknowledgement of the king, the first chord should sound out the due reverence, deep, prolonged, and full. So I'm just going to play you a little bit of the prelude, just a couple of lines, just to give you an idea of the continuo part. So we have a simple line which goes like this. So grandeur can also be conveyed by increasing the shortness of the anacrusis in Allemande, creating an effect of what's called, by Donington, ferocious flexibility on a foundation of strength and poise. So a little bit of Allemande. Right. So in contrast, here is a description of a solo sarabande given by Pommy. He danced with a totally charming grace, with a serious and circumspect air, with an equal and slow rhythm, and with such a noble, beautiful, free and easy carriage, he had all the majesty of a king. So there's lots of descriptions of how French music should be rendered, both within the music and without, but a lot of the information does come from the dance treatises. So important though it is, attention to the character of a piece is only part of the story. Rhythmic emphasis or articulation in dance, as in instrumental music, is what defines the dance piece as being of a particular type. The predominant role of the continuo in Rondeau le Duc d'Orléans and Menuet le Comte de Biron is rhythmic. Rondeau, which, while titled in terms of its form, is nevertheless a recurring menuet in its phrase structure and metre. Showing the typical step unit of a menuet, which is long, short, short, long, note values, the pas de menuet takes 6 beats in 3/4 time to complete, or 2 bars of triple rhythm felt as a slow duple. The ability of the dancer to hear the hypermeter was essential, as the menuet was danced as a step that could be added to, varied and embellished, and did not necessarily have a fixed choreography. In fact, the menuet's enduring charm lay in the flexibility that allows choreographic variety, as well as counter-rhythms between dancer and music and rhythmic variation, such as syncopation and hemiolas, within a regular and balanced framework. While the phrase structure often supported the 2-bar unit, it did not have to do so. Metrical structure, however, invariably did. Awareness of this rhythmic characteristic allows the continuo player to highlight this feature. So sarabandes are characterised by short, long, long, short, 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 long, short, and short, long, rhythmic patterns. Longs were often further subdivided, the second bar often containing a dotted note, as in the case of sarabandes La d'Armagnac. Characteristic guitar accompaniment strokes to early sarabandes were short, long, downward strums on the first and second pulses, which can be reproduced by the harpsichord. So just quickly on the sarabande. Okay, it's a brief overview of that period, but having looked at some of these characteristics that most define French dance music in the Baroque period, I'd like to now move on to that of an era closer to the world of pianos. So most pianists will have been brought up playing Debussy's Children's Corner, published by Durand in 1908. It's a suite of 6 pieces based, like an 18th century dance suite, on various dance forms, preceded by a prelude or overture, Dr. Gradus ad Parnassum. Debussy labels the pieces with titles and Italian or French tempo markings, but also gives minute and specific expressive instructions in French. He has this to say about Dr. Gradus. Dr. Gradus ad Parnassum is a kind of health-oriented cumulative gymnastics. It should be played every morning before breakfast, beginning moderato and ending spiritoso, which gives you an idea about his sense of humour. Jimbo's lullaby, which is subtitled Berceuse des éléphants, comes with instructions to be gentle and a little clumsy. Serenade for the Doll, which is a waltz, should be light and graceful. The Snow is Dancing, soft and blurry. The Little Shepherd, a piece in free form, indicated as gentle and delicately expressive. And Golligor's Cakewalk is designated strictly regular, which you might have noticed was not the case with the French Baroque. It was always irregular. Well, not always, but a lot of the time. So the suite was written for his adored daughter, Claude Emma Chouchou, and she was born in 1905, which he dedicated to her with the words, "My dear little Chouchou, with tender apologies from her father for what follows." So he has produced a suite in a similar style to what was happening 200 years prior to that, chock-a-block with articulatory, expressive and micro-tempi instructions. And in so doing, we see the importance that Debussy attaches to minutiae and his tradition. What you might not be so familiar with is another work for children composed in 1913. I think you can click on the thing now. A ballet entitled La Boîte à Joujou. With piano as its sole instrumentation, it was beautifully illustrated by André Allais and had a duration of less than an hour. It was about 45 minutes, depending on how fast you run. In it, Debussy's intrinsic affinity for the dance form and his understanding of children's imaginations are even more apparent than in Children's Corner. Debussy sets out his ballet by giving a list of the important characters, of which there are 12, plus multiple extras. He provides a short story. This story takes place in a toy box. The toy boxes are in effect kinds of towns in which the toys live like people, or else towns perhaps are only toy boxes in which people live like toys. And he goes on to give the story in which he says, the dolls were dancing, a soldier saw one of them and fell in love. The doll had already given her heart to a lazy, conceited and quarrelsome Polichinelle. So the soldiers and the Polichinelles had a big battle, in the course of which the poor little wooden soldier was badly wounded. Abandoned by the wicked Polichinelle, the doll gathered up the soldier, looked after him and loved him. They married and were happy and had lots of children. And the conceited Polichinelle became a rural policeman. So the ballet starts with a prelude, followed by 4 tableaux of varying lengths and an epilogue. In each of the scenes, the audience is immediately transported into the world of the child. How does he do this? Here is the prelude, a scene in which we see the toys asleep in various poses, some in the toy box. Its dreamy state gives way to snippets of future tunes, a waltz, a march, militaire, and a scherzo. So I'm just going to play you some of the prelude. next section is the dolls waking up. And I think you'll be able to hear from the fragmented nature of the piece and its enlivening and jumping quality that suddenly things are happening. Now, in the next microdance, Debussy indulges his love of the exotic with a scene Pas de l'éléphant. And he reworks an old Hindu chant in 5/4 time used to train elephants. Exaggeration and slow rhythms alternating with fast and deep bass notes create the elephant's character. And who said elephants aren't sorrowful? Éléphant. So, in a little while, I'm skipping a few dances now because we can't play the whole thing. I hope you're becoming children. So, we get Soldier's March, and for this, he creates that effect of marching feet through onomatopoeia. And in the midst of this, of the sound of marching feet, it's penetrated by a tune, presumably from a fife. But you know what? I think we should whistle it. Now, the naughty Polichinelle appears. This time Debussy is animated, irregular, interrupting these dissonances, and a very rude ending, because that's Polichinelle. That's all there is. So now we hear a policeman. We can hear his regular, deep, crunching boots, steady, pompous feet, and even a wagging finger at the end. And just behind the policeman is a naughty nègre who is mimicking the policeman. Won't go on. Okay, so perhaps just one more thing I'll play a little bit of, just so you can hear how varied the dances are within the ballet. They're all micro dances. They only go for 40, 50 seconds. Okay, so I think that's giving you a bit of an idea of the extreme variety and, that he employs to create wonderfully vivid characters. I think we're definitely transported into the world of the child. I know I am. So he uses exaggeration, quotation, pastiche, caricature, familiar rhythmic and melodic motives, and many other ploys. Debussy passes through a wide range of characters and emotions, many of them only momentary. We hear sadness, a prayer, humour, exuberance, naughtiness, graciousness, pleading, foreboding, plaintiveness. We meet an elephant, a policeman, a doll, a rude polichinelle, a soldier, a goose girl with geese, a shepherd with sheep, and hear a battle and a receding army. And we don't doubt who they are or what they are. So Debussy scores a rich array of dances, a waltz, a polka, a ronde, a march, a scherzo, a pastoral, and much in the way of free improvisatory movement. Each of these micro dances is given meticulous instruction as to tempo, animé, moderne, en passant, some with metronome markings, but also character, sentimental, comique, frayeur, triste, navré, joyeux, and éclatant. Nearly all his dynamic markings are in the mezzo piano to pianissimo range, but within that is wide variation in colour. Articulatory markings are meticulous, including strategic use of rests and specific pedalling instructions. Both Children's Corner and even more so La Boîte à Joujoux demonstrate an abundance of nuance, delicacy and subtlety that so characterises Debussy's style. To perform these works, half the fun must be to get down on the floor with the child and see the world from his, her or Debussy's perspective. Just a final thing to say is that La Boîte à Joujoux received only 93 bars of orchestration by Debussy. It was completed by one of his students, André Caplet. But I maintain that, like Children's Corner, the piano version is so full of detail and interest, it's worth being included in standard concert performance. And at the moment, I'm arranging it for a children's-sized orchestra. That's the end of that.